Hey you, and welcome. In this video, we will learn about looping in JavaScript. So let's dive right into it. I'll open up my Quokka, new JavaScript, take away the terminal, and let's get started. First things first, I will create an array, and then we're going to loop through it using 4 different methods. All right, so const animals, same array that we have been working with, has pigs, has chickens, chickens like that, and has horses. There we go. Now, first method that we looked at already was the for each method, which takes a predicate, which can be item, or I can name it whatever, animal. And then inside that predicate, I can do some business logic. In this case, I'll just console.log the animal that is currently iterating through. In this case, it went through 3 loops, first pigs, and then chickens, then horses. So each loop gave me an item. So that's one way to loop through the array. Another way, now you can easily forget this one, that's fine too. I haven't seen many people use it anymore. It's not very common anymore, but it is good to know that there is such a thing called the for loop, which is common between almost all the languages that I have learned. So in this case, it will be a for loop. It takes in 3 different parameters, but the syntax is very different. So don't try to memorize it. You can search it up online and that would be easy. So I'll just go ahead and say let I equals to 0. The I name for the variable is just a convention. Everybody names it Y, so I. So that's why I did it. Otherwise, you could name it anything, and that's okay as well. In this case, I works just fine. Semicolon, usually semicolon would end the line, but in this case, we're separating the expressions. So first would be instantiating a variable. Second, we are going to do a comparison to see if the loop should continue or not. In this case, I less than animals.length. So keep running the loop until you have reached the final item in the array, and then I++. That means every loop keep incrementing the 0 to 1, 2, 3, 4. So it keeps going incrementing up. And then inside here, I'll do a console.log, call the animals, and using the index, the square brackets, I will pass in the index of I, and that gives me the same thing that we have looked at. So you can see for each is the go-to approach here, because doing all the other syntax with the for each, so the for loop, is not going to work. So, but this is still available. It does apply in some scenarios. In this case, when we're looping through arrays, for each is the way to go. Of course, there's map function, which we're going to look at in the later videos. All right, so that's the second way. Another way would be a different kind of for loop, the for in loop. And let me show you what that looks like. So I think I will call index in animals, parentheses, console.log the index as is. Let's first see what the output is. So the output here is looping through 3 different times, and it gives me the index of 0, 1, and 2. That means I can use this index just like in the for loop, where we can say animals I. Index, there we go. All right, perfect. So that works as well. However, for each still looks much better than the for in loop. For in loop usually would be for object, I believe. So we're going to try that with an object as well. But for now, let's just continue working with the 4th one, which is the for off loop. And for off loop, I think works very well as well for the array. For animal off animals, and console.log animal as is, animal right there. Perfect. So that worked just fine. So you could work with for each or for loop. Either one works just fine. I still see for each being used more, or the map function used more than the for off. However, that is an option as well to loop through these lists. Let's create an object here and work with name something, and then key something else, or let's just say else, and replace obj over here with the animal. So for off will not even work, because that's not possible. It's only for arrays, so I'm going to take that back. For in, however, we can do that, and you see how it's showing undefined because the index is slightly different. It's actually the key. So what we're going to have to do is, either if you just want to work with keys, that's fine, and you can just continue working with for in. However, if you want to get the value, you have to say obj array index, and that would work as well. So for array and object, for in works the same way. For off is only for array. For each is only for array, and for loop is for any kind of iteration. Doesn't have to be array or object. You can simply say, I want this loop to run 5 times or 10 times or 10,000 times. And this thing would run because that's what its job is. The for loop is going to run for as long as you want it to run. Great. Those were the 4 looping methods that we can work with. One more I want to show you that is specific to arrays is the map method. So I'll take away the rest of the items here. Let's clean it up a little bit. And notice for the for each, for the animals for each, is not really creating another array for me. If I wanted to duplicate it, let's say duplicate, I would have to do something like this. I'll have to pass the animal in, and that would duplicate the array for me. And if I console.log it, I can say, give me the duplicate array. And there we go. Perfect. So that's how we can duplicate an array using for each. However, for a map method for an array, it lets you loop through each item and transform it and create another array out of it, which is very useful, especially when we're working with components and React frameworks. We may want to loop through an array of data and then convert it into some kind of component and then render it out as an array, which React allows. So that's why it's useful and used a lot in React. So let me show you what I mean. If I was to use it now, actually I can just do console.log animals.map. It takes a predicate just like the find or for each. In this case, every time it loops, it will loop through the item just like in for each. It will give me the actual item, which will be the animal. So I'll say, give me the animal, and the predicate will start with the curly braces. And if I was to just return the animal as is, notice that the output is exactly the same. That means it duplicated the array for me. Now I could transform it too. I could say if animal equals pigs, then instead of returning animal, return hog. There we go. Okay, perfect. So I have modified my array accordingly. So that's why map would be very useful. Of course, you don't have to really work with the string values at all. You could just return numbers instead. So I could say just return 0 for all of them. So loop through it and just change the array from string to a 0 values. So you could do anything. Of course, map function is very useful for array to be transformed and return a new array, which is good for functional programming. All right, I'll see you all in the next video.